Notre Dame controlled the Virginia Cavaliers from start to finish on senior day, and yet the win still didn't feel as satisfying as it could have been. Why that's a good place for Notre Dame to be, plus a whole lot more on today's Locked On Irish.
You are Locked On Irish, your daily podcast on the Notre Dame Fighting Irish, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, what's going on? Welcome to Locked On Irish, your daily Notre Dame podcast. I'm your host, Tyler Wojciak. I'm a Notre Dame alum and producer at Fox Sports, and I'm thrilled to have you here on Monday, November 18th, and thank you for getting your week started by making this your first listen of the day. Quick reminder to subscribe on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever else you might be tuning in today if you have not already. And this episode is brought to you by FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Just visit FanDuel.com to get started. All right, we have a lot to talk about following Notre Dame's 35-14 win over Virginia in the last home game of the regular season. There was an egregious blown call by the refs that wiped away what could have been an iconic touchdown on a fake punt. Notre Dame has a real problem at kicker. The defense is playing like the best unit in the entire country, and the offense struggled for a big portion of the game. So when you add all of that together, it doesn't really feel quite as satisfying as we probably hoped it would before the game started, and that's okay. As a matter of fact, it's a really good place for Notre Dame to be at this point in the season, because Notre Dame has been absolutely dominating their opponents as of late. 6 out of their past 7 wins were the biggest beatdown their opponents had suffered all season long, and now that has become the expectations. The fact that Notre Dame didn't win this game like 49-0 feels like a disappointment, and that's kind of crazy to think about when you consider where this team was at the beginning of the season when they were losing to a MAC team and then struggling to pull away from another MAC team in Miami, Ohio, just a couple weeks later. So this team has come a really long way, and a big reason why is the growth and development of this team and this program and the expectation that has been set by Marcus Freeman. It should be. Championship teams have a high standard, and when they don't reach that standard, it doesn't feel quite as good, even though Notre Dame won and even though they won by 3 touchdowns. But if you looked around college football on Saturday, a lot of really good teams struggled in wins. The number 1 team in the country, Oregon, they snuck by Wisconsin. Now, granted, it was on the road. It was at night at Camp Randall. Difficult place to win, but they only won that game 16-13. It was really not a great performance by them. Texas, who's the number 3 team in the country, they struggled a bit against Arkansas. That game was still close pretty late. You have Ohio State, who beat Northwestern 31-7, but that was actually close going into halftime. It was tied at 7, and then all hell broke loose for Northwestern, and then Ohio State ended up running away with it, but it still was not like a complete performance by the Buckeyes either. And then you got BYU. They should have lost to Kansas. So they still could win the Big 12, but they're in a really difficult spot now as well. So even the best teams in the country are not going to play perfect every single week. Just like at Georgia. They have 2 losses this season. They looked really, really good on Saturday. So this is the new norm in college football, and Notre Dame was far from perfect in this one. Offensively, it was a struggle. They converted on just 1 of 12 third downs. Riley Leonard had an interception, missed on a couple other throws as well. Notre Dame's wide receivers had a couple bad drops in this one, which is becoming a pretty concerning trend, to be honest with you. Jordan Faison had one near the end zone, and Bo Collins actually had another bad drop that was negated by a penalty, but still it was not a good play because he caught it. It was right in his hands, and then he dropped it, and then that would have been a big gain. But again, that doesn't technically count in the rule book or in the stat sheet because of the penalty on that play, but still, that's not what you like to see from your offense. As a team, Notre Dame had 9 penalties for 89 yards, but it wasn't just the amount, it was the damage that they did on those penalties because the fake punt was wiped off because of an illegal formation penalty, which was bullshit. Trust me, I will get to that in segment 3. Pat Coogan had a tough day, though. His hands in the face penalty took away an awesome touchdown by Jalen Harrison. Basically just grabbed a dude's face mask as soon as the play started. So I'm not going to argue about that one. And Notre Dame's defense absolutely dominated for the vast majority of this game. But they did give up a couple scores late, plus 1 that was interesting to some. So the line at the start of the game was 20.5 on FanDuel. So technically, Notre Dame still did cover if that's the number that you got it at. However, when I did the game preview earlier this week, the spread was a little bit more than that. So depending on when you bet it, depending on the spread that you got, that could have been a horrific beat for you at the end of the game. So I'm hopeful that anyone who is out there that bet on Notre Dame got that 20.5 because they covered that. But Not everyone had it at that number. So that's frustrating, right? And then on special teams, the Irish missed 2 field goals, and Max Holman muffed a punt and gave the ball right back to Virginia early on in the game. Marcus Freeman did not seem all too pleased after this game in the press conference. He seemed like a coach who was grateful that they got a win, was glad that they won pretty convincingly on senior day. They were able to get some guys in there late who don't play a lot. So that's the positive. But I think he knew that when he watched this game again, there was going to be a lot of things that were going to make him really frustrated, a lot of things that this team needs to fix. But there was a moment in the first half where it felt like this game could get dicey, but then it didn't. And that's what you want to see from a team, and that's what you want to see from your head coach afterwards. You want them to constantly be trying to achieve perfection, and that pursuit is what makes great teams great, and that is something that we're starting to see from Notre Dame more now than they did earlier on in the season. Like, it's actually a big change in the way that Marcus Freeman talks compared to what he was talking like at the beginning of the year. Like, remember, I think it was the Miami-Ohio game when they interviewed Marcus Freeman before the game, and he was extremely complimentary of Miami and said that Notre Dame was basically going to go off of what they did, that Miami was going to dictate the terms in the game because they're a good team. And I was just watching that thinking, like, what are you saying, dude? Come out with a little bit more confidence. Like, you are Notre Dame. That is Miami-Ohio. It doesn't really matter who you're playing, but especially Miami-Ohio. Notre Dame should dictate the terms at all times. So he was a little bit passive, or at least he was talking passively at the beginning of the season, and now it's a little bit different. He's demanding more from his team, and I think the fan base is kind of feeling that too. They want to see a more dominant win. They want to see Notre Dame win every game by 50, kind of like they've been doing, where they've just been hammering their opponents. And Notre Dame was much better than Virginia in pretty much every phase of this game, talent-wise and coaching-wise. So the fact that it was even just 21 points, I get it. I can see why that's a little bit frustrating to some. But when you look at this game closer, I think most of the problems that Notre Dame had are fixable, except maybe a kicker. Like Mitch Jeter needs to get healthy yesterday. Like, the third down stat for Notre Dame's offense is bad, but they also finished 3 of 4 on fourth down conversions. Riley Leonard missed 8 of his last 14 pass attempts, but he still finished 22 of 33 for 214 yards and 3 touchdowns. Plus, he completed 9 passes in a row at one point. And penalties cost him 93 more yards and a touchdown. So if not for that penalty by Pat Coogan, this would have been Riley Leonard's best passing game of the season statistically, and the drops have to be cleaned up as well. There was a concerning stat from Irish Illustrated that they put out. Of the top 25 teams, Notre Dame is third to last in pass attempts, and yet they lead the top 25 with 25 drops. That absolutely needs to be cleaned up. I think it can be fixed. I think that just requires a little bit more focus from all the receivers, but specifically Bo Collins and Jordan Faison, because they are 1 and 2 on the team in drops, but I think that can be fixed. I thought it was a little odd how much Notre Dame tried to pass the ball on third and short situations, and they did not execute well when they did. But they also didn't execute when they tried to throw the ball on first down either. So maybe Mike Denbrock was trying to break tendency and put some stuff out there on film because he knew that he didn't really have to worry too much about what Virginia was going to do on offense. So maybe they're trying some things, but it didn't work in this game. That doesn't mean it's never going to work going forward. We've also seen this team convert on third downs before. We've also seen them make more plays in the passing game this season, so there's no reason to think that this offense cannot bounce back from this performance. And on defense, I'm not going to overreact to 14 points in the fourth quarter, especially when a lot of backups were in. And one of those touchdowns was actually set up by a horrible missed call by the officials. Malachi Fields caught a 38-yard pass down the field, clearly dropped it, and they didn't even review it. So yeah, would you have liked Notre Dame to win by a little bit more? Absolutely. But also getting those backups reps at the end of the game was more important than that extra touchdown that they added there at the end. So all in all, this was like a B- game from the Irish, and yet they still dominated a Power 4 team that's likely going to play in a bowl game. And personally, yeah, I was annoyed during the game that it wasn't 49-0 or 42-7 like the exact score prediction I had in the game preview. But when I rewatched it, I realized that if just like a couple breaks went their way, it probably would have been 49-0 or 42-7 or something a little bit more along those lines. And unfortunately, just a couple things didn't go their way, so Notre Dame only won 35-14, but they still have won 8 in a row, and they are rolling with 2 games left. It's always better to learn after a win, and the Irish do have plenty to clean up after this win, but the fact we're talking about a 3-touchdown win in this way shows the growth of this team this season. All right, coming up next, Notre Dame defense had another outstanding game and a season full of them. Why this unit might be enough to carry them in the college football playoff is coming up next. Today's episode is brought to you by 5 Hour Energy. Our friends over at 5 Hour Energy know that being a passionate football fan isn't just a hobby, it's a way of life. It takes a lot of energy to power through all-day tailgates, touchdown celebrations, or an agonizing second overtime, which is why they've created the Stand the Fan 5 Hour Energy Shot with a special flavor called Fan Fuel, the energy shot made just for super fans like us, the fans who are first in the parking lot and who are the last to leave. We see you. You know what else gave me a bit of Irish fan fuel this week? The moment when Jeremiah Love broke off a 76-yard touchdown run. He is just a special, special back, and he certainly has breakaway speed. 5 Hour Energy knows that no matter what team you root for, being a fan requires heart, soul, and a whole lot of energy. Whether you're prepping for the big tailgate or ironing your jersey, your game day to-do list is always a mile long. That's why the limited edition, the Stand the Fan 5 Hour Energy Shot is here to help keep you fueled throughout the season. What's your fan fuel this week? Whatever it is, do it with a 5 Hour Energy. Available on 5hourenergy.com, shipped nationwide. I know it's what we've come to expect from the Notre Dame defense, but they are playing lights out right now, and they're playing as good as anyone in the entire country. Like that Notre Dame defense, I would put it up against any other defense in the entire country or any other offense as well, because they are just that good. And even though they gave up some points there in garbage time at the end, I think that this was one of the most impressive performances all season long. Like they had the Virginia quarterbacks in hell this entire game. At one point, I actually felt bad for Calandria. That poor guy, man. 3 interceptions from him. He had no idea what was going on out there. Plus, they forced a fumble. That forced fumble by Rod Hurd was such perfect timing, too, because 2 plays prior to that forced fumble, he makes a play. I believe Brown was carrying the ball for Virginia. He's running out of bounds. Hurd hits him. Brown kind of absorbs the contact, immediately gets in Hurd's face, starts talking trash. Hurd doesn't really entertain it much. He just goes back on the field, gets ready for the next play. 2 plays later, it was a different running back. Hurd gets his nose right in there, forces the fumble. Xavier Watts recovers it, and I was like, that is such a good bit of karma. This Virginia team, quick aside, they talked a lot of trash for a team that was getting smoked that whole game, because you got that one play that I just referred to with Brown where he was talking to her. But at least at that point, the game was still very much in doubt, right? It was very early on. But then Musket, their backup quarterback who ran it in from 19 yards out, he shushed the crowd. It's like, dude, you're down 1,000,000 points. The crowd is going to continue cheering because you guys still suck. So who are you to be shushing the crowd after that? It's like, maybe if the game was tied or anywhere even close to that, then maybe you could shut them up, but that wasn't happening. Notre Dame was celebrating. They were going to continue celebrating because they were dominating that whole game. They had a big celebration after that Riley Leonard interception late in the game that I thought was like, okay, cool, congrats. So, yeah, there was nothing I really liked about this Virginia team. They were way too cocky for a team that was getting smoked. Also, Tony Elliott going for those points there at the end. Like, come on, dude. Some people are betting on this game. And some people didn't get 20.5. But anyway, back to this Notre Dame defense. I already talked about Xavier Watts getting that fumble recovery. He also had his 4th interception of the season, plus an absolutely textbook pass breakup on a 3rd down play there early on in the game. And I heard a rumor that some NFL scouts are looking at Xavier Watts as a potential 5th-round draft pick. 5th? Like, what are we doing here? What doesn't Xavier Watts do well on the football field? If you want to tell me it's his size, maybe. He's not undersized compared to NFL safeties. He's great in coverage. He's gotten a lot better at stopping the run too. He hits with force out there. He had a big tackle early on in the game on a 3rd down. That was a really, really nice play. So you've got all the tools. He's been playing in an NFL scheme for the past 3 years, starting from Al Golden and Mike Mickens, who now, since he's taken over as the defensive backs coach, one of the best defensive backs coaches in all of college football. So like, what could there possibly be with Xavier Watts' game that would put him in the 5th round and not anything way high? I'm not even saying he should be like 1st or 2nd, but 5th, that's crazy to me. But then again, that's where Cam Hart got drafted by the Los Angeles Chargers. And if you watch Sunday Night Football in that game against the Bengals, before Cam Hart went out with a concussion, he was playing really, really well, and he has been playing well since he came in for Asante Samuel Jr., and he was a 5th-round pick. So if teams are going to continue to let these Notre Dame guys fall, especially defensive backs, late, some teams are going to get an absolute steal with Xavier Watts because he is phenomenal, and what he has been doing over the course of the past 2 seasons is something really, really special. Like Kyle Hamilton, probably the best safety to come through Notre Dame in a really long time, even though Notre Dame had Harrison Smith and a bunch of other really talented safeties. But Xavier Watts and his level of production is right there at the top, man, and I've really enjoyed watching him these past couple of years, and now I'm just like, man, I need to savor this because he is just that good. But he's not the only good safety. Adon Schuler is really good back there as well. He almost had another pick 6 in this one, and he looks great with the ball in his hands. He was making nice little, like, not like full-blown hurdles, but like nice jumps and like nice cuts out there when he has the ball in his hands. Like that's definitely a guy who played both ways in high school and was really, really good at it. So his breakouts year, even though breakout might be a little bit of a stretch, he's been really, really good this season ever since he beat out Rod Hurd to be the starting safety opposite Xavier Watts. So he's been awesome. Leonard Moore, true freshman. He also added another interception, but he did take a hard shot afterwards. It looked like he was grabbing his neck after that. It was a big hit. A big offensive lineman from Virginia hit him pretty hard when he was returning that interception. So that is going to be something to monitor, because then once Moore came out, then they had to move Jordan Clark from nickel to the outside safety, and then they had to bring Rod Hurd, who's the backup safety, in to play nickel. And even though Notre Dame's secondary has been awesome this year, they're getting pretty thin if Moore can't go out there either. But a really good game from him. On the defensive line, I thought Donovan Heinisch was great. He was very disruptive, 3 sacks over the course of the last 2 games. And you know who else played pretty good in this one? Some guy who has not had a bunch of great performances this year. I thought R.J. Oben was solid. 3 tackles, nothing crazy, but he was productive in this game, and I thought this was his best game of the season. Who else do I want to talk about here? Really just the defense as a whole, because it's not just the fact that they're making these big plays, they're forcing these turnovers. It's the fact that they prevent the opposing offense from ever making big plays of their own. I'm not going to count the 38-yard pass to Malachi Fields as like an explosive play, because it was so clearly a drop, and it's such a bummer that that play happened on Christian Gray, and that's going to be like not great on his stat sheet because it just was a drop. The ball clearly hit the ground. Anyway, their longest run was 18 yards, that one for the touchdown by Musket, and the longest pass, other than the one to Fields, was a 17-yarder to Tyler Neville. So you're just not going to nickel and dime this defense for a full game. It's just not going to happen. And going into the game, I thought Virginia might have some success running the ball, because it's been the one thing that Notre Dame's defense has been a little susceptible to, but that really wasn't the case in this game. Virginia finished with 128 rushing yards, and Notre Dame stopped them on 3rd and short a couple times as well. Virginia dropped back 38 times in this game, and they gained 155 yards on those plays, according to Tim O'Malley from Irish Illustrated. Just that is staggering, man. This really is looking like the best defense in the country. They're 3rd in scoring defense behind Ohio State and Army. We're going to find out how good that Army defense is this upcoming weekend. They are 6th in 3rd down defense, 1st in team passing efficiency defense, 4th in red zone defense, and they are tied for 1st in turnovers gained with 25. And despite some inconsistency on offense this year, this defense is going to keep Notre Dame in every single game the rest of the year. I know they haven't really been tested in a while by like a great offense. Actually, really hasn't happened all season long, because Texas A&M was a good team, but they were built on their defense. There is no reason to think that even the best offenses in college football are going to be able to score a bunch of points on this group. And this is an interesting year in college football, because there really is no dominant team. In the first segment, I talked about how Oregon and Texas and even Ohio State to some degree struggled this weekend. There is no real dominant team. Every single team is flawed, even the best teams in the entire country. And I'm still not ready to say that this Notre Dame team is a national championship contender just yet. They need to clean some things up, especially on offense. But the more I watch the other teams, I realize that they are all flawed as well. So on any given day, this Notre Dame team could beat any team in the country. They wouldn't be favored over them for sure, but they could beat them because of this defense. This defense is so good, they're going to be able to keep them in games. And if the offense can create enough explosive plays with guys like Jeremiah Love, who had another 76-yard touchdown in this one, haven't really talked about him that much in this recap episode, but I should, because he had another really great game after a quiet game the week before. If you watch my game preview, you know that I thought we would see a big bounce back game from Jeremiah Love. So they have the pieces, but it really comes down to this defense. Like, Oregon couldn't score in Wisconsin. Texas offense hasn't been the same. Ohio State certainly has a different year, but they struggle. I think Alabama's offense is scary. But you take any of them and you put them up against Notre Dame's defense, I like my chances in that matchup. I really do. And nobody's going to want to match up with this Notre Dame defense. None. And if they do make a run in the college football playoff, it is because of Al Golden's unit. So appreciate Al Golden, appreciate Mike Mickens, appreciate every single staff member on this defense and every single player, because this is special, special stuff we are seeing. We should not take it for granted. All right, the time has come to complain about the officials. Normally, I try not to do that because it's often a waste of time, but on Saturday, the ACC officials reached a new low, and it's long past time for some change. More on that right after this. Today's episode is presented by FanDuel. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets in the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. All right, here's my pick. We got Monday Night Football tonight. Houston Texans traveling to take on the Dallas Cowboys, Monday Night Football. Houston is favored by 7 right now on FanDuel, and you know what? I like the Texans to cover. I just think this Cowboys team is terrible, especially without Dak. And I think the Texans, they kind of need a statement win. And even though the Cowboys haven't been very good this season, if Houston just dominates them, their in-state rival, I think that would go a long way in terms of their perception. So I'm taking Houston -7 tonight on Monday Night Football. And you can bet more on FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Today's episode is also brought to you by Gametime. Whether it be sports, concerts, comedy shows, you name it, I love going to live events. And Gametime is a new feature called Gametime Picks that makes getting tickets for your favorite live events even easier. Gametime Picks filters out the fluff to show you incredible deals on great seats so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. There's a lot of great sporting events going on right now. A lot of great concert tours going on across the country. You got college football and the NFL in full swing. Even though the MLB playoffs just wrapped up, you got the NBA, you got the NHL. So get off your couch and get in the game with Gametime. Personally, though, my favorite thing about the app is you get a panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy, and then you can buy tickets in seconds with just 2 taps. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Download the Gametime app today. What time is it? Game time. All right, let's talk about the officials in this one because, unfortunately, that's going to be a big part of this game. Like when we look back on the season, there's probably not going to be a ton of time spent on the Virginia game, but there is going to be some time spent on a fake punt play that was taken off the board because the officials in this one had no idea what they were doing. John Bryce from Football Scoop did a beautiful write-up about this play and why it was such a blown call from the officials. It's on Football Scoop. I encourage you to go check it out because he really goes in detail on why this was such a colossal screw-up. So, let's break it down. Notre Dame lines up to punt. Jeremiah Love, running back, was split left. He comes into motion. Jack Kaiser, veteran linebacker, he took the snap in a short shotgun. Not like a full 5-yarder that you normally see on offense, but he also was not lined up directly underneath the center either. He was about 1.5 yards, maybe 2 yards away from the snapper. He catches the snap in shotgun. Then he hands the ball off to Jordan Faison, who is literally to Jack Kaiser's right, crouched down, literally playing hide and seek with the Virginia punt return team because he's hiding and he's only 5'10", so he's able to stay pretty hidden. They did not really see him that well, so he's crouched down low behind the line, and Kaiser hands the ball off to Jordan Faison while Kaiser is motioning or is moving right. Jordan Faison is going left. So Kaiser gives him the ball and then carries out the fake going right with Jeremiah Love right alongside him. So the Virginia punt return team sees Kaiser and sees Love going one direction. They all go there. Meanwhile, Jordan Faison goes left, and only one player on that Virginia punt return unit saw him, tries to chase him down. Faison makes a miss, goes down, just jukes the punt return guy out of his shoes, ends up going in for a touchdown. It's an awesome play. Everyone who I'm watching with is going nuts. People who aren't even Notre Dame fans are just like, that was awesome. What a cool play. Then a flag comes in. Late. And here's the thing. The officials, much later than they normally would on any given play, decided that Notre Dame was in illegal formation because in their mind, Jack Kaiser took the snap under center, which is, by rule, not allowed. But that didn't happen. As a matter of fact, Marcus Freeman was seen on video yelling at the refs before the play that Kaiser was in the shotgun because he was. And Freeman and his staff actually met with a crew of officials before the season about that play, and they said, hey, we're thinking about running this year. Is this legal? And mind you, when they created this play, they had the rule book in mind. So they created this, and they're like, look, this should be allowed by every letter of the law. Marty Biaggi, special teams coordinator, this is what those guys are paid to do, figure out how to not bend the rules, but take advantage of them in a little bit of ways. So what changed? Because that crew told Notre Dame and their entire coaching staff that play was legal. The rules didn't change, but the level of competence between the officials they initially talked to and this crew is certainly different. And I think that's the case with a lot of crews, right? Officiating is bad in college football. And look, I know people have complained about officiating for years, but if you really watch a lot of college football like I do on Saturdays, like there's so many games where you're like, what is going on? But the ACC in particular is really, really rough. David Hale from ESPN tweeted something similar this weekend saying, college officiating is bad all around, but it's especially bad in the ACC. And I think a lot of people are starting to take notice here. And the refs talked for like 2 to 3 minutes. It felt like an eternity after this fake punt play. And clearly they didn't know what to do. Like I couldn't hear what they were saying to each other, but anyone was watching could read their body language and say they have no control of this situation. But they threw the flag. They didn't want to pick it up. And you could just tell that they were like, all right, well, we have to go through with this. They call legal formation. Marcus Freeman is livid. I don't think I've ever seen him that mad at an official. And he had every right to be, because the coaches and everyone who created this play, they did everything they could. They took all the steps necessary beforehand to make sure that this situation where the officials are kind of working together in the middle of the field, talking to each other, trying to figure out, was that a penalty? Is that against the rules? I don't know. It looked really cool, but should it be allowed? I don't know. They're basically making it up on the fly. Marcus Freeman did everything right beforehand. So the fact that he did all that and it still ended up in this situation is so unbelievably frustrating. And I feel for him. And I know that you can't review every single penalty or else games would take 10 hours long, but this seemed like such an easy thing to review and get the call right. Maybe they don't even have to go into an official review. Maybe they could just look up on the Jumbotron and see, oh yeah, Jack Kaiser was not lined up under center. He was in shotgun. This penalty should be taken off and the play should stand as a touchdown. And it took points like off the board. So that's the thing that's like really, really frustrating, because you don't want to review every penalty, but this is a touchdown. This is a big moment. And sure, it's not going to dramatically affect the outcome. Notre Dame ended up killing him. And then ultimately, it didn't really matter because Notre Dame's defense got an interception almost immediately afterwards. Adon Schuler nearly took it back to the house. That would have been perfect poetic justice. Didn't happen quite as good in that scenario, but still, this is bad. Imagine if this was a close game and like there were real stakes to that call. Then it's a whole different situation. And I think the bigger problem here is that it could happen, and the officials keep screwing it up in the biggest moments. I already mentioned the Malachi Fields 38-yard catch that was so clearly a drop. That set up their first touchdown. This was another touchdown impacted by a penalty. And I just think that the ACC is a real, real problem on their hands. And I just don't understand why we're at a point in college football where every single conference has their own officials. What's the point? It's not like a regional sport anymore. After conference realignment, teams are playing all over the country. Like, it doesn't really make any sense for the ACC to have their own officiating crew, the Big Ten to have their own crews, so on and so forth. There should just be one national governing body. Everyone is operating under the same roof, and I would hope that you get a lot more consistency across the board, but that has not been the case, and it's particularly bad in this conference that Notre Dame isn't even really in. They just have like an open marriage with, but it's a problem, and it's just so frustrating because that touchdown was one of those plays that you're going to see like years down the line, right? You're going to see that on highlight reels. It's just an awesome moment for Jordan Faison, who's had a pretty difficult year dealing with injuries and a little bit of inconsistency at wide receiver. Like, that was such an awesome play from him, and for that to be taken off because the officials didn't know what they were doing is really, really bad. I guess the one bright side in all this is that Notre Dame is being much more aggressive on special teams since the bad start they had at the beginning of the year, and that's really good because they have been taking advantage of their opportunities in that phase of the game. Even though they did muff a punt in this one, that was frustrating. So I like what I'm seeing from Marty Biagi's unit, except at kicker. That's a real concern. Notre Dame does not have a kicker right now. They can kick off and they can make extra points, but they cannot make a field goal, and that's not a good place to be when you're in the middle of November and you're coming down the last couple of games of the regular season and you're hoping to make a run in the college football playoff. I have no idea what the deal is with Mitch Jeter because I know that he's hurt. He's obviously not healthy, but he also played and made 4 point-after attempts. But he also did not go out for a field goal. And I'm not mad about him not going out there for the 54-yarder. Like, that's a bomb. And I'm not even mad about that miss either, even though it looked disgusting. It's a 54-yarder. That one's probably not going in, even with Mitch Jeter fully healthy. But Zach Yoakum missed a 36-yarder. And I was like, why is Zach Yoakum in the game? And I've heard some people say, oh, well, maybe it's because, it was really cold on the field and Mitch Jeter was pretty tight. Maybe. But wouldn't you want him, if he is healthy enough to go out there and kick extra points and that stuff, to like get some real game reps because they're going to need him late in the season? And wouldn't you want him to, knock a few in so that when they do need him, it's not the first time he's going out there to kick a meaningful kick and God knows how long. So Zach Yoakum missed that third 36-yarder, and he's really their best option right now. So at some point in the near future, Notre Dame is going to have to make a big kick when it matters. And who can you trust right now? I really don't know. Jeter clearly isn't all the way healthy, and none of the backups are reliable either. So this is not a situation. Like, there are red flags everywhere with the Notre Dame kicking game. I'm not blaming Marty Biaggi, obviously, but they need to figure out a way to get Mitch Jeter healthy, because this is a big concern. You do not want to be in a position at this point in the season where you don't even really have any realistic option to kick field goals. So Notre Dame is going to have to continue to be aggressive on special teams outside of the field goal unit. They're going to have to try to do fake punts. They're going to have to try to get more aggressive with the offense and be a little bit more consistent on third down and fourth down conversions, because this is a concern. There was a lot of good in this game. There were some things that need to get fixed, but the one glaring issue that I'm not sure can be fixed is the kicking situation, and is definitely going to be something that we'll continue to monitor going forward. All right, that is going to do it for this episode. Thanks again for making Locked On Irish your first listen of the day. I still have some more thoughts in this game. I barely talked about Jeremiah Love, and I feel bad about doing that because he had an exceptional game. Jaden Harrison had an awesome game. Aeneas Williams had a great game too. So I have more thoughts on this, and tomorrow I'm going to be joined by Luke Smith, and we're going to go over our final thoughts on this game. And then on Wednesday, I'm going to have my full preview of the game against Army, and then some more good stuff coming the rest of the way. Mailbag on Friday. You know the drill there. Please subscribe on YouTube or wherever you listen to the podcast. And if you like what you watch today, remember, give this video a like below by giving it a thumbs up. Or if you're listening to the podcast, please rate the show 5 stars and leave a review and subscribe there as well. Had a great time. Hope you enjoyed the weekend. Hope you enjoyed the game. I'll see you tomorrow.